Picture this. The year is 1876, and the American West stretches endlessly under a blazing sun. Dust devils dance across the prairie, and somewhere in the distance, cattle low as they move across the range. This isn't just any story about cowboys and the frontier. This is the true tale of a man whose legend grew so large that folks still tell his story today. His name was Nat Love, but the world came to know him as Deadwood Dick. And friend, his story will change everything you thought you knew about the Old West. Now, before we ride into this tale, let me paint you a picture of what the frontier really looked like. See, Hollywood got a lot wrong about the American West. 1 in 4 cowboys was black, and the frontier was a melting pot of cultures, languages, and dreams. Native Americans, Mexican vaqueros, freed slaves, Irish immigrants, Chinese railroad workers, they all carved out their piece of this vast wilderness. But today we're following the trail of one particular cowboy whose adventures read like something out of a dime novel, except every word was true. Nat Love was born into slavery in Tennessee in 1854. When freedom came, his family scratched out a living on a small farm, but young Nat had bigger dreams. At 15, with nothing but the clothes on his back and a burning desire for adventure, he headed west to Kansas. Now imagine being a teenager alone, walking into a world where your survival depended on skills you'd never learned. Nat couldn't ride, couldn't rope, and had never seen a longhorn steer up close. But he had something more valuable than experience. He had determination that burned like a prairie fire. His first job was with the Dunn & Company cattle outfit in Dodge City. The other cowboys took one look at this skinny kid from Tennessee and figured he'd be heading home within a week. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Nat threw himself into learning everything about cowboy life. He studied the way experienced hands sat their horses, watched how they read the weather and the cattle. He practiced with his rope until his hands bled, and he learned to shoot with a precision that would soon become legendary. But it wasn't just his skills that set Nat apart. It was his character. In a world where a man's word was his bond and courage meant the difference between life and death, Nat Love proved himself time and again. He could gentle the wildest horse with patience and understanding, track a lost steer across miles of trackless prairie, and face down danger without flinching. The cattle drives of the 1870s were the lifeblood of the frontier economy. These massive operations moved millions of longhorn cattle from Texas ranches to railroad towns in Kansas, covering hundreds of miles of dangerous territory. The work was brutal. 18-hour days in the saddle, river crossings that could turn deadly in seconds, stampedes that could crush a man and his horse without warning. But for Nat Love, every mile of those dusty trails was a step toward freedom. Not just the legal freedom that had come with emancipation, but the deeper freedom of a man who had proven his worth through skill and courage rather than the circumstances of his birth. It was during these early years on the trail that Nat began to build the reputation that would eventually make him famous. He could read the signs of an approaching storm hours before other cowboys noticed the first clouds. He had an almost supernatural ability to calm spooked cattle, and his marksmanship with both rifle and pistol became the stuff of campfire legend. The life of a trail cowboy was harsh beyond modern imagination. Cowboys would rise before dawn, often sleeping on the hard ground with nothing but a thin bedroll between them and the earth. They'd saddle their horses in darkness, check on the herd, and begin another day that might stretch 16 hours or more. The pay was modest, maybe $30 a month. But for men like Nat Love, it represented something far more valuable than money. Respect earned through competence. The great cattle drives followed well-established routes like the Chisholm Trail, the Western Trail, and the Goodnight Loving Trail. These weren't just paths across the prairie. They were lifelines of commerce that connected the cattle-rich ranges of Texas with the hungry markets of the North. Along these trails, cowboys faced every danger the frontier could offer. River crossings where swift currents could sweep away horse and rider, lightning storms that could spook cattle into deadly stampedes, and the ever-present threat of rustlers and hostile encounters. Nat Love learned to navigate all these dangers with a skill that impressed even veteran trail bosses. He developed an almost mystical connection with the cattle. able to sense their moods and predict their behavior in ways that seemed supernatural to his companions. When a storm was brewing and the herd grew restless, Nat could often calm them with nothing more than his voice and his presence. The summer of 1876 found Nat and his crew in Deadwood, South Dakota, a rough-and-tumble mining town that had sprung up like a mushroom after rain following the discovery of gold in the Black Hills. Deadwood was a place where fortunes were made and lost in a single night, where the law was often whatever the fastest gun decided it should be, and where a man could reinvent himself completely if he had the courage to try. The town itself was a study in contrasts. Elegant gambling halls stood next to crude saloons, while merchants in fine suits conducted business alongside miners still covered in the dust of their claims. The streets were a mixture of mud and gold dust, and the air rang with the sounds of hammers, saws, and the constant chatter of commerce and ambition. The town was celebrating the 4th of July with a grand festival and cowboy competition. Cowboys, miners, gamblers, and merchants had all gathered to see who among them could claim the title of best rider, roper, and marksman in the territory. The prize money was substantial, but more importantly, the winner would earn a reputation that could open doors throughout the West. Nat entered every competition, driven not by pride alone, but by a deeper need to prove that excellence knew no boundaries of birth or circumstance. The bronco riding came first, and Nat drew a horse that had never been successfully ridden, a black stallion with fire in its eyes and lightning in its hooves. The crowd fell silent as Nat approached the animal. Instead of the rough handling that most cowboys employed, he spoke to the horse in low, soothing tones, his hands gentle but firm, as he prepared to mount. When the gate opened, horse and rider became locked in a dance as old as the frontier itself. The stallion bucked and twisted, trying every trick in its considerable repertoire to unseat its rider. It sunfished and crow-hopped, spun in tight circles, and launched itself skyward with bone-jarring force. But Nat held on with a combination of skill, strength, and sheer determination that left the crowd breathless. When the dust settled, he was still in the saddle, and the cheers that erupted could be heard clear across the gulch. The roping competition followed, and here too, Nat's years on the trail served him well. His lasso seemed to have a mind of its own, finding its target with unerring accuracy, while other competitors struggled with the wind and their own nerves. He roped steers with the precision of an artist, his movements fluid and economical, wasting no motion or energy. But it was the shooting competition that would truly cement his legend. The targets were set at distances that would challenge even the most experienced marksman, and the pressure was intense. One by one, the other competitors fell by the wayside, their shots going wide or falling short. When Nat's turn came, he drew his Colt .45 with the fluid motion of a man who had faced real danger on the trail, where a missed shot could mean the difference between life and death. His first shot rang out clear and true, finding the center of the target. The second followed, then the third, each one placed with surgical precision. The crowd watched in amazement as Nat proceeded to demonstrate shooting skills that seemed almost supernatural. He could hit a playing card edge-on at 50 paces, put 6 shots through the same hole at 20 yards, and perform trick shots that left seasoned gunfighters shaking their heads in disbelief. When the smoke cleared, Nat Love had not only won the competition, but had done so with a display of marksmanship that would be talked about for years to come. As the crowd erupted in celebration, the mayor of Deadwood stepped forward with a prize that was worth more than money, a new name. "From this day forward," he declared, "you shall be known as Deadwood Dick, champion of the Black Hills." The name stuck, and with it came a reputation that would follow Nat Love for the rest of his days. But the real test of Nat's character came not in competition, but in the face of genuine danger. Later that same summer, while driving cattle through hostile territory, Nat and his crew were attacked by a band of Pima Indians. The attack came at dawn, when the cowboys were still groggy from sleep and the cattle were scattered across a wide valley. In the fierce battle that followed, Nat fought with the courage of a man defending not just his life, but his right to exist as a free person in a free land. He rallied his fellow cowboys, organized their defense, and fought with a skill and determination that impressed even his enemies. The battle raged for hours under the scorching desert sun. Bullets whined through the air, arrows found their marks, and the smell of gunpowder mixed with dust and blood. Nat moved through the chaos like a man possessed, his rifle speaking with deadly accuracy, his voice cutting through the din to coordinate his men's defense. When the dust settled, several of his companions lay wounded or dead, and Nat himself had taken a bullet in the leg and an arrow in the shoulder. But he had given as good as he got, and the attacking warriors recognized in him a fighter worthy of respect. Rather than kill him outright, they took him prisoner. Impressed by his courage and fighting spirit, for weeks Nat lived among them, learning their ways and earning their grudging respect through his refusal to break under pressure. He observed their customs, learned their language, and came to understand the complex motivations that drove their resistance to white settlement. During his captivity, Nat gained insights into Native American culture that few white men of his era ever experienced. He learned their methods of tracking and hunting, their deep knowledge of the land, and their sophisticated understanding of survival in harsh environments. He also came to appreciate their perspective on the rapid changes sweeping across their ancestral lands. His escape, when it finally came, was a testament to both his ingenuity and his deep understanding of the land that had become his home. Using knowledge gained during his captivity and skills honed on countless cattle drives, Nat managed to slip away in the dead of night, making his way across hundreds of miles of hostile territory with nothing but his wits and his unshakable determination to survive. The journey was a nightmare of thirst, hunger, and constant danger. He traveled by night, hiding during the day, living off the land with skills learned from both his cowboy companions and his Native American captors. He crossed rivers in flood, navigated by the stars, and avoided both hostile war parties and dangerous wildlife. For days, he subsisted on cactus fruit, prairie grass seeds, and whatever small game he could catch with improvised snares. His wounds festered in the heat, and fever clouded his judgment, but still he pressed on, driven by an iron will to survive and return to freedom. When he finally stumbled into a friendly settlement, more dead than alive, his tale spread like wildfire across the frontier. Here was a man who had faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious, not through luck or accident, but through the kind of courage and resourcefulness that defined the very best of the American spirit. The years that followed saw Nat Love become one of the most celebrated cowboys of his era. He rode with some of the most famous outfits in the West, participated in cattle drives that covered thousands of miles, and faced dangers that would have broken lesser men. Through it all, he carried himself with a dignity and grace that commanded respect from all who knew him. His reputation opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed. Ranch owners sought him out specifically, knowing that his presence on a drive meant the difference between success and failure. Other cowboys, regardless of their background, looked up to him as a leader and mentor. But perhaps Nat's greatest achievement was not any single act of heroism, but rather the way he lived his life as a testament to the possibilities that the frontier offered to those brave enough to seize them. In a time when the color of a man's skin often determined his fate, Nat Love proved that character, courage, and skill could overcome even the most entrenched prejudices. His story reminds us that the American West was built not by any single group, but by people of all backgrounds who shared a common dream of freedom and opportunity. African-American cowboys like Nat Love made up nearly a quarter of all trail hands during the Great Cattle Drive era, yet their stories have often been overlooked in the popular imagination. These men faced not only the usual dangers of frontier life, the stampedes and storms, the rustlers and hostile encounters, but also the additional burden of prejudice and discrimination. Yet they persevered, earning their place in the great saga of the American West through their skill, their courage, and their unwavering determination to claim their share of the American dream. The legend of Deadwood Dick serves as a powerful reminder that heroism comes in many forms and from many sources. Nat Love's story is not just the tale of one remarkable man, but a window into a larger truth about the American frontier. that it was shaped by the dreams and struggles of people from every walk of life, each contributing their own unique thread to the rich tapestry of our national story. As the sun sets on this tale, we're left with an image that captures the essence of the American frontier spirit. A lone rider silhouetted against the vast western sky, free to chase his dreams across an endless landscape of possibility. That rider could be anyone, from anywhere, united with all the others by the simple but powerful belief that in America, a person's destiny is limited only by their courage to pursue it. The story of Nat Love, Deadwood Dick, champion of Deadwood and master of the frontier, stands as a testament to that enduring truth. In his life and legend, we see reflected the very best of what America has always promised to be. A land where freedom is not just an ideal, but a lived reality for all who have the courage to claim it.